not using this bond notes or RTGS currency that's floating around, particularly on electronic platforms. And we also spoke about the shelves being empty when people go shopping, and inflation and prices going up. Well, to tell us a little bit more about what all of this means, and perhaps try and look forward to 2019, I'm now joined via Skype by Zimbabwean economist Eddie Cross. Eddie, thanks very much for joining us. Always a pleasure to talk to you. So it's been a year since Robert Mugabe stepped down as president. President Mnangagwa was inaugurated before the elections, and on the campaign trail he spoke about a new Zimbabwe, a better Zimbabwe, and that was his campaign promise. He was given a mandate to lead. A year down the line, a lot of people are saying that people are worse off than they were a year ago. Just how bad are things, or how difficult are things for the average Zimbabweans at this time?
I think things are very difficult. This is going to be a tough Christmas for the majority of Zimbabweans. Prices have risen very sharply in the last 3 or 4 months, and spending power has declined. Salaries have not been adjusted, and that situation continues. And on top of that, you have these shortages, particularly fuel. The queues here are kilometers long, and people have to even sleep in their cars overnight to get fuel. And this is simply, undermining national confidence to a huge degree. I think things are very difficult at the moment.
Some people are suggesting that these fuel shortages are not just about scarce foreign currency, but that there are political overtones involved here.
There's no doubt that the government is divided. We seem to have no particular centers of power. Emerson Mnangagwa seems to be hands seem to be tied when it comes to critical issues and critical decisions. And we're a bit puzzled by that, because he's got all the authority that he needs. He's president, he has the constitutional authority, he has the backing of the security forces. I don't know why he's not tackling these problems decisively, but he's not. And that's the main cause of our problems at the moment. It's lack of decision making.
All right, so 2019 is just around the corner, and I guess it's almost impossible just to tell what might happen in the year ahead. But one of the reasons I called you up is that you wrote an interesting article. You met 2 businessmen and had a frank chat with you. What did they tell you about how they see what's going on?
Well, it was very disturbing, because these 2 men were the chairman of 2 of the largest businesses in the country, and very influential people financially and in the business world. And these are men with instant access to ministers. And they were extremely downhearted about the situation. They said there were no decisions being made, corruption was continuing, the government didn't seem to have any direction. Even where policy statements have been made, these policies have not been implemented. And generally speaking, they were at the end of their wits. They were facing serious difficulties in their businesses, the shortages of currency, shortages of imports, difficulties in getting decisions on routine matters like export permits for commodities. And they really didn't know what to do. They were at the end of their tether, in fact. I was deeply disturbed by that meeting, I must say.
All right, so what can be done? It does seem that some kind of intervention is required, and if nothing happens, will people take to the streets?
I'm worried about that. I'm worried about the rising temperature here, quite frankly. I think the people of Zimbabwe are incredibly patient. This is a very Christian country. People don't readily take to the streets, but you saw that when Mugabe was overthrown, that really the country turned out in support of the army. We don't want the army to take matters into their own hands again. That would not help. That would be very, very damaging. And quite frankly, I can't see us really changing leadership at this stage. I think Mnangagwa is there. And I think really it's up to him to take a grip on the situation and make the decisions and implement the decisions that are needed. That's all that's needed. If we get a few decisions taken decisively and they know what to do, don't think for 1 minute these chaps don't know what they've got to do. They know, but it takes political will to get it done.
All right, so President Mnangagwa said last week that the reason these prices are going up and that there is shortages is, he said, gluttonous businesses were to blame for these prices. You know, it may be a stretch to blame everything on them, but is there some truth in that it's not just government, it's not just the politicians, but the private sector may also have to put their hand up for some of what's going on?
I'm reluctant to put any blame at the feet of the private sector, because I think the private sector here has done everything in its power to try and minimize the damage of bad government decisions. But the reality is that the fundamentals here are not being addressed. I think that's the main issue. If we had a market-driven economy, if government would allow market forces to determine prices and to sort out supply and demand, believe me, we wouldn't have a problem in 10 days. And the situation here would rectify itself.
All right, so what needs to happen in 2019? President Mnangagwa did create the impression that there was a new broom that was sweeping through all the things of old. But the more we look at things, the more it starts to feel and look like the old order.
I think we've got to give him a lot of credit for what he's done so far. It's not that he's been sitting on his bum doing nothing. He's done a great deal, but it's not enough. You've got to finish the job. I mean, the first priority has got to be to remove exchange control and lift controls on the price of foreign exchange. That they've got to do. They've got to allow the market here to trade in foreign exchange without limitation. They would allow the banks to come into the market so that people have a basis on which to price goods. It also, that would sort out the problem of the fuel queues, because our price would then rise dramatically very quickly. He's got to restore confidence throughout the system. And that's a much tougher job. I mean, lifting exchange control, we can do that in 5 minutes. We can do that simply with a statement in the House of Assembly. We did it in 2009, we can do it again. And the impact of that decision would be dramatic, I can tell you, as it was in 2009. But the other things that are needed, respect for the rule of law, respect for property rights, getting our political situation right so that a re-engagement with the international community can take place. Those are all things which have got to happen if we're going to put Zimbabwe back on the road to prosperity.
All right, Eddie Cross, we're going to have to leave it there, but it looks like a 2019 may be quite a difficult one, but certainly one where a lot needs to happen for things to change. Thanks so much indeed for your insights. That's Zimbabwean economist Eddie Cross sharing his thoughts with us about the situation in Zimbabwe.